Stay with me. Tonight.
The phone buzzed once on the kitchen counter, then went dark. Jake Harlan stared at the screen like it had just bitten him. Sent. To E. Voss, CEO. Message: Hey gorgeous, kids are finally asleep. If you're still up, I'm thinking about the thing you do with your tongue. Doors unlocked, winky face. He had typed it to Emily, the babysitter who'd been flirting with him for weeks, except Emily's contact was saved as M. Babysitter, and Elena Voss, the Ice Queen CEO of the company that employed him, was simply E. Voss. 5 years at Voss Tech, and he had never once texted his boss anything more personal than running 3 minutes late, traffic on 95. His stomach dropped through the linoleum floor. Mia, his 6-year-old, padded into the kitchen in her dinosaur pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Daddy, I had a bad dream. Not now, baby, he whispered, frantically tapping at the screen. Delete message. Delete message. The little blue bar crawled, then froze. Delivered. He jammed the power button, as if turning the phone off could vacuum the text back into oblivion. The clock on the microwave blinked 10:47 p.m. He lived in a modest split level in Columbia, Maryland, 28 minutes from Voss Tech headquarters on the best of days. On a Thursday night with no traffic, maybe 22. He had approximately 4 minutes before panic fully set in. 4 minutes and 37 seconds, to be exact. Because at 10:51 p.m., headlights swept across the living room curtains, bright and white and expensive. A car door shut with the quiet authority of German engineering. Jake's heart tried to exit his body through his throat. The doorbell rang once. Not hesitant. Not angry. Just certain. He scooped Mia up, she was already half asleep against his shoulder, and carried her to the couch, tucking her under the old navy blanket his wife had bought the year before she died. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, whispered, "Stay right here, okay, sweetie. Daddy's got to talk to a grown-up." He opened the door. Elena Voss stood on his porch in a charcoal trench coat, heels still on, hair twisted up like she'd come straight from the office. The porch light carved sharp shadows across her cheekbones. She looked exactly like the woman who had once made a senior VP cry in a boardroom, except her eyes were softer than he'd ever seen them, and she was holding his text message up on her phone like evidence. "Mr. Harlan," she said, voice low, almost amused. "We need to talk about your tongue hypothesis." He was going to die. Right there in his socks with the hole in the toe. "I can explain," he started, voice cracking like a 13-year-old's. "Please do." She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, closing the door behind her. The click of the latch sounded final. She smelled like winter air and something expensive, oud and orange blossom, he would learn later. She scanned the living room, the toys on the rug, the half-finished Lego spaceship, the framed photo of him and his late wife, Sarah, laughing on a pier in Annapolis. Her gaze lingered on the photo longer than he expected. "I thought you were someone else," he blurted. "Obviously. The babysitter. M. She's 22 and funny and she was supposed to get that text. Not you. I'm so sorry. I'll delete it. I'll delete myself. I'll resign tomorrow. God, please don't fire me in front of my kids." Elena tilted her head. "You have more than one. 2. Mia's 6. Noah's 8. He's at a sleepover tonight or this would be even more humiliating." A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "You assume I came here to fire you. Why else would you drive across Maryland at 11 at night?" She slipped her coat off, revealing the navy sheath dress she'd worn to the executive strategy meeting that afternoon. She draped the coat over the back of his recliner like she belonged there. "Because, Jake," she said, and it was the first time she'd ever used his first name, 3 years ago, at the company Christmas party, "you told me my laugh sounded like the first warm day in March. And I have wondered, every single day since then, what would have happened if I hadn't walked away from that conversation." He stared at her. The room felt too small. "You remember that?" "I remember everything," she said quietly. "I'm paid to notice details. And I noticed you." He swallowed hard. "You're my boss. I'm aware." He gestured helplessly. "Elena Voss. You once told Forbes you don't date employees because emotions are a liability. I said a lot of things to Forbes. She took one step closer. Turns out some liabilities are worth carrying. Mia's small voice floated from the couch. Daddy, who's the pretty lady? Elena's eyes flicked to the little girl, and something shifted in her expression, something raw and unguarded. She crossed the room in 3 strides and crouched beside the couch. Hi, sweetheart, she said softly. I'm Elena. I work with your daddy. Mia studied her solemnly. Are you here to yell at him? Because he lets me have ice cream for breakfast sometimes. Elena laughed, the same laugh from the Christmas party, low and surprised, like she hadn't expected it to escape. No yelling tonight, she promised. Just talking. Mia yawned, satisfied, and tucked her thumb in her mouth, a habit she'd dropped months ago. Within seconds she was asleep again. Jake watched Elena brush a curl off his daughter's forehead with a tenderness that didn't match the woman who'd frozen out half the C-suite. How did you even know where I live? He asked. HR files, she said without shame. And I may have driven past this house once or twice in the last year. Don't flatter yourself, I was in the neighborhood. He huffed something close to a laugh. You're terrifying. I've been called worse. Silence settled, heavy and electric. He rubbed the back of his neck. So what happens now? I mean, this is insane. You can't just show up at an employee's house because of a missent sext. Technically it was a sext invitation, she corrected, standing. And I'm not just anything tonight. I'm a woman who got a message that made her heart race for the first time in years, and I decided to find out if the men who sent it by mistake might be brave enough to mean it on purpose. His mouth went dry. Elena. I'm not asking you to jeopardize your job, she said quickly. I'll recuse myself from anything involving your team. We'll be careful. Discreet. Or we can pretend this never happened and I'll go back to being the cold CEO who signs your performance reviews. She waited. The ball was in his court, and they both knew it. Jake looked at his sleeping daughter, then at the woman standing in his cluttered living room like she'd been dropped there by some cosmic joke. He thought about the last 4 years, grief that had hollowed him out, the guilt of even considering moving on, the way dating apps made him feel like he was betraying Sarah's memory just by swiping right. Then he looked at Elena again, really looked, the faint shadows under her eyes that no concealer could hide, the way her hands were clasped tight like she was bracing for rejection. He took one step. Then another. Until they were close enough that he could see the pulse jumping at her throat. I don't know how to do this, he admitted, voice rough. I haven't kissed anyone since my wife died. I have school drop-offs and pediatrician appointments and I cry in the car sometimes when Noah's favorite song comes on the radio because it was hers. I'm a mess, Elena. I know, she whispered. I've watched you be strong for 4 years. Let someone be strong for you for a change. He reached up, hesitated, then brushed his thumb across her cheekbone. She leaned into the touch like she was starving for it. The kiss, when it came, was tentative, 2 people afraid of breaking something fragile. Then her hands fisted in his t-shirt and his fingers slid into her hair, and 4 years of loneliness poured out of him in a sound he didn't recognize. They broke apart, breathing hard. Stay, he said against her mouth. Just stay a little longer. She nodded, eyes shining. They moved to the kitchen so they wouldn't wake Mia. He made tea because it was the only thing he could think to do with his hands. She sat at the table where his kids did homework, tracing the crayon marks with one fingertip. Tell me about her, Elena said quietly. Sarah. So he did. For an hour, he talked about the way Sarah used to dance in the kitchen while making pancakes, how she'd been diagnosed 6 weeks after Mia was born, how he'd held her hand until the very end. Elena listened without interrupting, tears tracking silently down her face. When he finished, she reached across the table and laced their fingers together. I can't replace her, she said. I don't want to. But I would very much like to be part of what comes next. If you'll let me. He brought her hand to his lips. Slow, he said. My kids, they have to come first. Always, she promised. The months that followed were a masterclass in careful joy. Elena never spent the night when the kids were home, not at first. Instead, she showed up on Saturday mornings with donuts and a willingness to lose at Mario Kart. She sat through Noah's entire school play even though it was 2 hours of recorders and forgotten lines. When Mia had nightmares, Elena was the one who crawled into the bottom bunk and read The Velveteen Rabbit in a voice that made Jake fall in love all over again from the hallway. At work, they were meticulous. She moved his team under a different VP. They took separate elevators. The only person who suspected anything was Rachel from accounting, who once caught them holding hands in the parking garage at 2 a.m. after a product launch. Rachel just grinned and said, "About damn time, Harlan." The first time Elena told him she loved him, they were in his backyard fixing a flat soccer ball. The kids were inside arguing over the last popsicle. She was on her knees in the grass, hair in a messy bun, smudge of dirt on her cheek. "I love you," she said simply, like it was the easiest thing in the world. He dropped the pump and kissed her so hard they fell over. A year later, almost to the day of the infamous text, Jake proposed on the same porch where she'd once threatened his career with a smile. He didn't have a ring yet. He had something better. He handed her a folded piece of paper. It was the original text message, printed out, framed in cheap dollar store wood the kids had painted with stars. Underneath, in Mia's wobbly handwriting and Noah's blocky capitals, it read, "Best mistake ever." Elena cried so hard she couldn't get the "yes" out, so she just nodded until he slipped the real ring, a simple sapphire, because she hated diamonds, on her finger. At the wedding, Mia was the flower girl and Noah the ring bearer. Elena wore a tea-length lace dress and danced with Jake to the song Sarah used to play on repeat. Later, when the kids were asleep on piles of coats in the back room, Elena rested her head on his shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For sending that text to the wrong person." He laughed, the sound full and free. "Anytime, gorgeous." And somewhere in the universe, a babysitter named Emily never got her flirty text, but she did get a $500 Visa gift card and a note that said, "For almost changing my life." Turns out it changed anyway. Sometimes the best love stories begin with a mistake. Sometimes all it takes is 5 minutes, one reckless message, and the courage to open the door.